Welcome 49ers faithful, I'm Drew Kerr, 49ers Sports Talk. Today I'll be doing a recap of every single draft under the regime of Jed York, Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, and Tariq Ahmad, and the respective win percentage of each round, meaning how many picks have either turned into starters or been producing at a high level. We'll dive in just a moment. Stay tuned.
With the third pick in the 2017 NFL Draft, the San Francisco 49ers select Solomon Thomas, defensive end, Stanford. Does now. With the ninth pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the San Francisco 49ers select Mike McGlinchey, offensive tackle, Notre Dame. With the second pick in the 2019 NFL Draft, the San Francisco 49ers select Nick Bosa, defensive end, Ohio State.
So Nick will play his ball out on the West Coast in Northern California.
But again, San Francisco plays in the toughest division arguably in the NFL right now, the NFC West. As we said, they lost Emmanuel Sanders. There are some concerns about offensive line as well. But the pick is in. Let us see what San Francisco did. They moved one slot back so Tampa could move up. Where is San Francisco going?
With the 14th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the San Francisco 49ers select Javon Kinlaw, defensive tackle, South Carolina.
Well, perhaps another surprise, but Javon Kinlaw is one hell of a football player.
Roger Goodell.
With the third pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the San Francisco 49ers select Trey Lance, quarterback, North Dakota State.
And it is the Bison, Trey Lance.
So starting out with the 2017 draft, in the first round they chose Solomon Thomas, Reuben Foster, and then they moved on. Akella Weatherspoon, C.J. Beathard, Joe Williams, George Kittle, Trent Taylor, D.J. Jones, Pita Taumo Pinu, Adrian Colbert, and I think overall this draft was decent for their first draft. Obviously Solomon Thomas didn't work out the way they wanted to. Reuben Foster was a complete mess. And, Akella Weatherspoon's still in the league. You could argue that's a success. I think he's starting for the Rams. He might be on his way out there, too. So, Beathard, backup, third round. You could argue that was a good pick, but, it wasn't. Joe Williams, complete bust. George Kittle, Hall of Fame player, probably the best pick of that draft. Trent Taylor was a good slot receiver. And D.J. Jones, valuable starter in the league. He was a valuable piece with the Niners. And, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him in Denver. Pita was a bust. Not necessarily a bust, but he just didn't make it in the league. Adrian Colbert did, give the Niners some valuable minutes and valuable snaps. So I did go ahead and say he was a success there in the 7th round. Before we dive too deep into this, I have a quick trivia question for you guys, draft related. In the 1981 NFL Draft, the 49ers selected 3 different defensive backs. Which of these 3 was selected in the 2nd round? Was it A, Carlton Williamson, B, Ronnie Lott, or C, Eric Wright? I'll have the answer to that at the end of this video. Moving on to 2018, the Niners with their first pick selected Mike McGlinchey, moved on to Dante Pettis, Fred Warner, Tarvarius Moore, Contavious Street, DJ Reed, Marcel Harris, Julian Taylor, and Richie James. I think this draft was a good success just on the simple fact that they got, all-pro Fred Warner. Could have been a first rounder. They didn't know that's how good he was going to be. But a lot of people did have a pretty high grade on him. So even in the 2nd round, Dante Pettis was not it. Travarius Moore, he gave the Niners some good backup minutes and some good, he came in a pinch, he had a few picks, but, I don't think that was a super successful pick. Contavious Street battled injuries left and right. He, I thought he had a lot of promise. I thought he was going to turn into something. I was hoping that after that first year of rehabbing that he would come back and be a force, but he just couldn't pull it together. DJ Reed, phenomenal cornerback. Went over to the Jets after the Niners. Saleh took him over there with him, and he's always had a really high PFF grade, and kind of wish we would have hung on to him. Ward and DJ Reed would have been pretty nice there in Lenore, but they just, they let him go. Julian Taylor, same thing as Street, kind of battled injuries. And then Richie James was a decent return man. He's still in the league, played with the Chiefs last year, got a ring with them, not with us. So, I don't know about that one. I wouldn't really call it a success, but maybe for the 7th round, if you put it like that, you could argue that was a success. So that was a great draft. Fred Warner, obviously the best one in that draft in the 3rd round. So pretty good draft there. And in 2019, I think that this was probably Kyle and John Lynch's and Tariq's best draft here. Obviously, Nick Bosa, you couldn't go wrong there. He's one of the best. He's top 10 player in the entire NFL, maybe even top 5. So couldn't go wrong with Nick Bosa. Deebo Samuel is a force. He's an absolute menace. He is a Pro Bowler, and he's very versatile. Jalen Hurd, had really high hopes for that guy. I saw him in person in the preseason game against Dallas, where he actually fractured his back, but he did it. He was running over safeties, and I think he learned his lesson really quick, and it ultimately cost him his career, that you can't run everyone over in the NFL. And Mitch Wishnowsky, obviously still our punter. I would say he's an above average punter, so that's a win there. Dre Greenlaw, if they would have picked him in the obviously if they picked Nick Bosa in the 1st round, but even in the 2nd round, if they would have picked Dre Greenlaw, or the 3rd round, I think that would have been a win. Caden Smith, had high hopes there. He, was a good tight end 2, or had the promise of being a good tight end 2, went to the Giants and then just sort of fizzled out. Justin School, same thing. There was some promise there, just never panned out. And, Tim Harris had some good special teams value, but just couldn't stay healthy. They drafted him with the hopes. Tim Harris had a really high grade on him coming out of college or into the draft, and the injuries just kind of really set him back, and he never really was able to bounce back from that. 2020 was an extremely weird year for all of us. This was the COVID year. This was the year that they had to do the draft inside their houses, quarantined, or whatever we were doing, that whole thing there. And so the first pick was Javon Kinlaw. Never really materialized into the player that everybody hoped he would be. He had some really good college film. I think all the draft analysts loved him. Niners obviously saw stuff on film that they loved, and he battled with injuries. He just never really could get it together. Last year, he had his first full healthy year, but I think he'd been so dinged up with injuries that he could not really develop into the player that he should have been. And so, Brandon Ayuk was the other 1st rounder. Of course, that's a success. I mean, he's definitely top 2 route runner in the entire NFL. Might be the best blocking wide receiver in the entire NFL. Niners are going to give him a big bag. He's going to get paid, and hopefully there's no trade there. I don't think that there will be. But Brandon Ayuk is a force. He is a menace. He has great chemistry with Purdy, and I think that he is, in a lot of ways, more valuable than Deebo Samuel. Deebo, is very unique with his versatility and his leadership on the team and stuff like that. Brandon Ayuk's a little bit more quiet, but I think he's starting to get a little bit more loud. He's kind of found himself as a player, and I think that he's, an elite wide receiver in the NFL. Colton McKivitz starting on the right side. He is an average tackle in the NFL. I think that he has the ability to become slightly above average if he just keeps working on his craft, but the Niners might be looking to replace him. Charlie Warner was the 2nd tight end all of last season. That was a success in my mind. And then Juwan Jennings. I think this was an overall really good draft besides Javon Kinlaw, but I think that Kinlaw could have been. It just didn't really work out the way that they had hoped. Jumping right into 2021, everything was finally starting to get back to normal here in terms of out of COVID. Everybody is starting to come out of their houses and come into the light. And, I think that 2021, the draft there was a little bit of a bust. I don't think that, It was the 49ers' best draft by any means. They traded a bunch of draft capital to get Trey Lance in the first round. They thought he was going to be the guy. He was supposed to be, Mahomes 2.0, but he just, again, sort of similar to Javon Kinlaw. He did have some bad luck with injuries. He wasn't able to really go through off seasons and develop his craft and fix his throwing motion and those types of things. If he would have stayed healthy by the end of his, time with the Niners, I think he could have been a lot better. He did show flashes of being good. I've seen videos of him with the Cowboys, and he's really been hitting the lap hard. And, one thing that you can't take away from Trey Lance is his work ethic. I think that he, some people are like saying, oh, he's on the beach and this and that, his Instagram's posting. Yeah, these guys have lives in the off season, but I've also seen just as many videos of him working really hard. And, I think that he's going to probably take over as quarterback 2 for Dak. And if Dak gets injured, we might see Trey Lance behind center for Dallas. So, anything can happen, but he was, by every metric, a bust for the 49ers. He still might just be a bust in general, but, that entire draft class was trash in terms of quarterbacks. It wasn't good at all. Aaron Banks, we can say that he panned out. He definitely is, a quality starter in the NFL. It doesn't hurt having Trent Williams next to him. Trey Sermon, Kyle Shanahan, and John Lynch just could not draft running backs to save their lives, which is probably why they went after somebody like McCaffrey in the draft. And, they did get Elijah Mitchell, though, in the 6th, and Elijah Mitchell did start for them for a season, and he was very effective for that season. And, he just has had really hard struggles with staying healthy, and that just sort of seems to be a theme with a lot of these guys that could have developed into really high-quality starters. They got Ambry Thomas after Trey Sermon, and Ambry Thomas is, streaky, I guess would be the best word to put on Ambry Thomas. He's just not consistent. If he could get consistent, he could be a very, good corner in this league, but that's just where he's been in the doghouse. He was in the doghouse with Saleh in his last year, DeMeco Ryans. Jalen Moore has been the swing tackle. He got injured also early on in his career, and he's struggled with that. But he did have to come in a few times last year, and pinch hit for McKivitz and also Trent Williams for a few plays. So maybe he'll develop into a solid swing tackle, but you can't count that as a win there. You draft guys to be starters and replace starters, and Moore isn't that guy. Diamador Lenore, definitely a win there. He is a fierce competitor. He is an above-average corner. They've moved him into the nickel position, and he's just embraced it and ran with it. And he might be the best nickel corner in the entire NFL. He's definitely top 5. So definitely a win there. Talanoa Hufanga, first-team All-Pro. And, if he can bounce back from injury, he's going to probably put together another first-team All-Pro season. I've very high hopes that Hufanga will be himself this season at some point, and the Niners will get back on track. All right, 2022, Drake Jackson, Ty Davis-Price, Danny Gray, Spencer Burford, Samuel Womack, Nick Zakelji, Elijah Davis, Tariq Castro-Fields, and Brock Purdy. So this draft, I have mixed feelings about. You could argue that Brock Purdy's probably the only player that's worth anything out of this entire draft. Drake Jackson still has a lot to prove. Got injured, unfortunately, last year. Kind of seems to be the theme. Ty Davis-Price, had high hopes for that guy. He flashed here and there, but just never really could put it together. Danny Gray was involved in the Rashee Rice car crash that is under investigation. There's a warrant out for Rashee Rice right now by Dallas PD. So, I'm not sure how Danny Gray's going to be viewed by the Niners, being involved in such a careless act and hanging out with those types of guys. So, Danny Gray might be on the chopping block this year if they can find another speedy wide receiver or just a receiver in general that's going to produce and kind of push him out. I don't expect Danny Gray to be on the roster this year. If he does, it'll be a miracle. Spencer Burford missed the block in the Super Bowl. That doesn't encompass his entire career. He has flashed. He has really he's above average in the run game for sure. I've seen him just railroad some guys and just completely level them. So he does have some power he could develop, but right now, bust. Not gonna get a green light from me. Samuel Womack, same thing, had very high hopes. He flashed. For some reason he continued to be in the doghouse. So maybe in practice, things that the general public isn't seeing. For some reason, he just never could get over the hump and get on the field to be more than a special teamer. He has contributed on special teams, but in general, Samuel Womack is not, he's not considered a success. Nick Zakelji, fringe backup. He was Purdy's roommate for a while. He hasn't really developed into anything. Kalia Davis kind of reminds me a little of Javon Kinlaw with the injury thing. I don't think he's going to develop just because the injuries have set him back so much. Tariq Castro-Fields, not on the team. So overall, getting a franchise quarterback in this draft, you could call 2022 a win. But overall, I don't think that you could really, you can't give the draft as a whole in 2022 a thumbs up or 2 thumbs up. It's, you got a franchise quarterback, great, but the rest of it was kind of stunk. It just stunk. And finally, 2023, most of this draft is still to be determined on their success rate. So kind of, for practicality purposes, I left some of it off. That said, Jair Brown and Jake Moody were big contributors last year. So I think that, both those third rounders were successful in their respective rookie seasons, and you have to give credit there. But overall, 2023 is still up in the air. We still got D. Winters and Jalen Graham that could emerge as force at linebacker. There's a few other players that could step up and make a difference. Okay, so kind of to wrap it all up with a bow tie, here's a look at the actual win percentages per round, and kind of illustrates where the Niners have had success and where they've really struggled, and maybe they can get better, hopefully. As fans, we all want this team to get better, but we can also acknowledge the hard truths. And one of the hard truths is in the first round, the Niners have completely whiffed. Almost on every single player. There was a layup with Nick Bosa, so if that wasn't there, if they drafted a little bit outside of the top 5, who knows what would have happened. There were some good players in that draft, but they could have whiffed like they tend to do. So first round is 16%. Second round was a 50% hit rate. They've had 4 draft picks in the second round. Deebo Samuel and Aaron Banks are wins. And so, 50% is really good. That's sort of like the baseline of where you want to aim. Third round, 27%. Almost 30%. Fred Warner, Jair Brown, and Jake Moody, all starters. And fourth round, 25%. Gets a little bit worse there. So there was 4 players in the fourth round. Mitch Wishnowsky is the only player that has come out of the fourth round and been successful. The fifth round, George Kittle, Trent Taylor, DJ Reed, Dre Greenlaw, Colton McKivitz, Diamond Lenore, and Talanoa Hufanga. Almost 80% there. They just, the fifth round is the Niners' money round for whatever reason. These guys can find day 3 picks and just, but only in the fifth round for some reason. They can't find them in the fourth. They found a few in the sixth and a few in the seventh. The sixth round, 27%. Seventh round is 50%. Adrian Colbert, Jawan Jennings, and Brock Purdy. I do think that Braden Willis, Ronnie Bell, and Jalen Graham all can, step up as seventh rounders potentially. Time will tell. I have really high hopes for Braden Willis. If the Niners do draft another tight end, I think that will be an indictment on Latu and Willis and kind of what the Niners think there. But Willis did play a little bit. He did dress for the Super Bowl. He got some minutes, in the Super Bowl. So I think that, I think that overall the Niners have drafted pretty well. But in order to, really tell how well they have drafted, you kind of have to look at the bar. And the Chiefs, I think, under the bar, they've set the bar very high. And, so we'll go ahead and take a look at the cream of the crop, and we'll take a look at their drafts and what they've done. They've been highly successful. these past few drafts. And so yeah, we'll just take a look at that. Everyone always wants to give all the credit to the Chiefs, to three specific people, Patrick Mahomes, obviously, Travis Kelce, and Andy Reid. Those are like the only three players that people talk about, it seems like, with the exception of maybe Chiefs fans and Chiefs analysts. But here's the thing. Their scouting department has built a juggernaut, especially in the past few drafts. They just continue to hit on, every single pick. And so, 2017, 33%, pretty good. A lot of the Niners drafts were around that. 33% is decent. 2018 was by far their worst draft. And 2019, 67%, almost 70% hit rate. In 2019, we faced them in the Super Bowl, so obviously, they put together some really good pieces in 2019. 2020 was exactly the same, 67% win rate. 2021, again, the theme continues around 70%, and 2022, 55%. So especially the last four drafts, they've really added players to help their team and continue to get stronger and stronger. It's not just Kelce, it's not just Mahomes. They help, but it's not them. It's the guys around them. This is a team sport. People act like, it's tennis and Mahomes is a golfer or something. It's just not the truth. And Mahomes actually had a really bad year last year, down year. Even with all the pieces, everyone always wants to say, all his receivers drop the ball and this and that and everything like that. But the Niners' drop rate was actually similar. So, it wasn't quite as bad as the Chiefs, but it wasn't too far off. So people always want to, give all the credit to the quarterback, but really it's the pieces around him that helped lift him. I think that the Chiefs, in some games, were winning in spite of Mahomes. Mahomes turned the ball over 19 times last season, 14 picks, 5 fumbles. He was fumbling the ball all over the place. So, I think that if he continues to trend down like that, I think the perception is going to change on Mahomes. And, hopefully for the Niners' sake, it does. But 2023, their last draft, there are some rookies, like I said, with Rashee Rice, who's now facing charges in Dallas, as I mentioned earlier. So we'll have to monitor that, as well as Chamari Connor, who started 7 games for KC in the secondary. So 2023, just like us, still up in the air. There's some players there they could probably contribute at some point. That's how the Chiefs draft. They draft as with the vision of players, eventually contributing. And the answer to today's trivia question is Eric Wright, picked out of Missouri in the second round, 40th overall by the Niners in 1981. He played with the team from 1981 to 1990. Well, that's a wrap, faithful. Thanks for watching until the end. Please feel free to drop a comment with your thoughts about the past 49ers drafts. Don't forget to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you already have not. Thanks to those who have already, and I appreciate you. Until next time, take care of yourselves.